One of the tools that comes in very useful when working with DAServers is WWClient. One of the questions that it helps to answer is, how do we know that the DA server is working properly, doing its translation, and effectively connecting the different components together? In this section, we will discuss the WWClient diagnostic tool. I use it quite frequently when I'm installing or setting up new DA servers, as well as if I'm troubleshooting an existing DA server. This can help pinpoint where problems might be coming from. We'll look at how and where to get WWClient tool, what the installation of it looks like. It's very, very simple. We'll walk through how to use it. We'll set up a connection, and then we'll set up an item, and we'll discuss what each of those are. Then we'll also take a few moments and just talk about some of the potential things that WWClient can do that you need to be careful of. So let's get started. I've located the device integration CD that came with some of my other products. We want to go into the WW section, which is Wonderware's kind of catch-all folder, and then look under Diagnostic Utilities. And there's an executable there, and then installation instructions. The installation instructions basically give you some brief instructions on what to do to install it. It installs 2 files wherever you put the folder, and when you're done you just delete those 2 files. There's no complicated or enhanced installation process. I'm going to copy this to the desktop. Now I'm going to launch diagnostic.exe. And it asks, where do you want this installed? I'm just going to put it on the desktop as well. So that's just an unzipping utility. It creates 2 files for us. I'll delete the executable. We don't need it any longer. And there we go. Now we have WWClient installed. Going to launch WWClient. And now we have the interface that allows us to check some of our connections. And you do that under connections. You start there and you do create connections. It's going to ask for 3 pieces of information. Now I've already preloaded this one. If your DA server is on the same box that you're doing this, in this case mine is, you can leave it blank or put localhost. But you can put an IP address here or the name of another node. Application comes from, I refer to it as what's between the dots. So if we want to connect to this DA server, we want to catch after the orchestra and the dot and before the 5 and the dot. So what we want there is DASABCIP. If it was this one, it would be DASS7, DASABTCP. That's telling it which one of these DA servers to go in and look for. The application is DASABCIP, and the topic, we want to connect to the topic that we've created here, boiler 1 second. So those are the 3 pieces of information you need: the node, the application, and the topic. You'll never use IoT thread. Even the folks at Wonderware don't know what it means. It's a piece of development that was never finished, and it just exists here. IoT is another way of calling or describing SweetLink. So this is what the DA server communicates with, and then DDE is the older information exchange. We will almost always use IoT here. In this case we're going to create a connection using IoT to this topic. And now anything that you see here other than 0 indicates a good connection. So we now have established a good connection on the computer side of our DA server. Thinking back, we have 2 components that we need to communicate or translate between. The computer that has InTouch or Historian or application server running on it, and a PLC or other field equipment. DA servers become the translators that make that communication possible. The WWClient tool allows us to check each of those connection streams. and we have different phrases or terminology that's built into WWClient that describe each one of those connection paths. To check the connection between the DA server and the InTouch or Historian or Wonderware components, that's called a connection. To check the status of the connection between the DA server and the PLC, that is called setting up an item within the connection. So those are the two primary pieces that WWClient uses to check each of these connections. Now we'll check the other side of the connection between the DA server and the PLC, and that's where you add an item. Here you would use something that exists in the PLC itself. This is a PLC level tag. So if you're dealing with a PLC 5, it might be N740. If you're dealing with one of the newer control logics, then your items might be named or more of a human readable description. But in this case, we want to look at a tank level, and it's a real value. You get to choose between discrete, integer, real, or string. And here you just type in the information that you want. Once you have it described accurately, then you advise EX. And that's all we really want to do with this from the item level. Now let's look at Wonderware Client. We have tank level 2 using this connection, a date timestamp indicating the last time the value changed, and then also this is key. This is telling us information about this tag or this item that we want to communicate with. Notice the third number, it's a hexadecimal value. Notice the third number is a 1. When you see a 1 in the third digit's location, that means there's no communications to the PLC. It can't find that connection or that PLC. If the third digit is a 0, that means there's good communication to the PLC, but it can't find the item. The tank level 2 doesn't exist in the PLC. It can see the PLC, but it can't see that tag. The magic value we're looking for is 00, C is in Charlie, 0. The decimal equivalent of that is 192. When we see 00C0 here, that means we have a good, strong connection. It can see the value, it can see the tag, it can see everything that it needs to deliver us meaningful information back and forth along the DA server. One more area to examine is back in our system management console. Now that we've created a connection and an item to tank level using the boiler 1 second topic inside of our DA server that's running, we now have diagnostic tools that are available to us, as well as information in the log file. So let's go look at the log file first, and you'll see that there's some information it's been giving. Device connection attempted, timed out, socket closed, tag database upload started for the boiler, tag database upload trigger while processing, timed out due to connection error, has not been cached. So what you're getting in here is a series of connection information dialog back to you indicating that there's something wrong with that connection to the PLC. And another way of looking at that is in the diagnostic section. Let's go to the device groups. And right now we only have one connection established in our entire DA server, and that's to the boiler. And notice it's got a red box beside it. That means there's something going on. We have one item, one active item, and one error. You can drill down into that item, and there should be our tank level 2. It's also red because I cannot connect to it, again seeing that 001B on the quality. If I did have 00C0 here and a good connection, I would see the actual value being displayed here for tank level. So again, the diagnostic section inside of the DA server allows you to look at the status of any of your topics. Finally, in the way of a caution or describing the power of WWClient, it is talking directly to this PLC right now. And if this connection was good, I could put a value here, and this could be a start signal or an output to a motor, and I could turn it on purely by pressing the poke value, and it would write this value to this address. So the caution becomes, this bypasses any InTouch application or any safeties that may or may not be in place. This will write whatever value you have there directly to the PLC, as if you pressed a button or changed the value of something. So use this with caution and make sure that you understand what you may be reading from or writing to when you're using the WWClient tool. It's also a good idea when you're done using it as an application that you don't leave it on the desktop or leave it readily available for someone to come along behind and use. So let's review. With respect to the WWClient tool, we've talked about where to go and get it and installing it, configuring it, how it's used to check the connection components around a DA server, that it's useful during an installation of a new DA server as well as troubleshooting existing DA servers. And finally, we set up a connection and some items.